Alex Jones Show, because there is a war on for your mind.
Joining us again is Stefan Molyneux, founder and host of Free Domain Radio, largest popular philosophical show in the world. As he points out, he's gotten millions and millions of views in his Truth About video series that looks at an unbiased, objective facts regarding current news stories and historical events. You'll find that at Free Domain Radio, as well as he's on Twitter at Stefan Molyneux. Now, Stefan, we're talking about the rate increases. You pointed out nobody's really seriously challenged the central bank since JFK. There's a reason for that, I think. The first person to challenge the central bank was Andrew Jackson. He had an assassination attempt on him as well, but he survived that. The central bank did not survive Andrew Jackson, but they did weasel their way back in. These rate increases are something that I think is going to be a key tactic as the left fights back in the next year.
There are, I think, two groups that are currently at war with the way things are going with regards to Donald Trump. The first, of course, is the leftists, and they are ideological. In other words, they truly believe, that rich people are rich because they've stolen from poor people, and there's no bell curve in intelligence, and everyone's the same, and all inequalities arise from exploitation. Like, they fully double down on that ideology, and they're just going to fight using whatever tactics they have. On the other hand, though, there are the pragmatists who use leftist ideology to do the classic Marxist divide and set people against each other and destroy the family and all this kind of stuff. Now, the pragmatists, I think, are going to have some sympathy for what Donald Trump is doing, because if there's any indication from what's been happening with the Dow and what's been happening with the retention of jobs in America as the result of Donald Trump's phone calls to particular people, then what's going to happen is the economy is going to improve under Donald Trump. And the people who are in charge, they don't want to milk the cow until it dies. They don't want to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. So there are the useful idiots on the left who are just going to double down on their philosophy no matter what, and don't have any long-term survivability, but are just ideologically programmed. But there are, in some ways more sinister, the people who are in charge, who want to stay in charge and recognize that they do need a boost to the economy in order to continue being in charge. And I think there is going to be a conflict between those two groups in terms of supporting Donald Trump in the short run versus trying to take him down from an ideological
Hang on, we're going to be right back with Stefan Molyneux. We got another 5 minutes with Stefan. He's graciously accepted to stay on. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Stefan Molyneux in this last segment. And as we went to break, Stefan, you were talking about how there's two different groups that are going to be there in Washington. We're going to have leftist ideologues and pragmatists. I want to get to those leftist ideologues here. We need to talk about the Obama transition team, because Obama is not going to go away. He's made it very clear he's going to operate a shadow government. And we've seen things that are really unprecedented in this country. Usually there's what they call a honeymoon period. After the voters have voted, most of the time the opposition will kind of lay off and kind of get the, lick their wounds and kind of reassess the situation. Not so in this particular case. Right away, riots in the streets and so forth. Now we see Obama saying that he's going to remain in Washington. This is something we've not seen since Woodrow Wilson, that we've had a president remain in Washington. He's also had some of his key advisors, like John Holdren, say, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here to speak out against anything that Trump does against our climate change agenda. And we've had Obama announce that he's going to get with Eric Holder, and he's going to challenge redistricting plans throughout the country, because we have so many Republican legislatures that have redistricted to their favor, just as the Democrats always do. So he's going to try to overturn in the courts what they couldn't win at the ballot box. And then he's also talking about how he's going to coach young talent. So we've got all of these different aspects here, his youth corps, perhaps, if you want to look at it, or identifying the next group of leaders. But they're coalescing into a shadow government. This is something we haven't seen before. Let's talk a little bit about the ideologue left.
Well, I mean, my argument has been, David, for a long time, that all Donald Trump's victory has done is buy us time. It has not solved the problem. It has simply bought us some time. In the same way that McCarthy in the 1950s, going after the intense Soviet infiltration of the State Department and other departments within the U.S. government, bought some time. It did not solve the problem, as we can see, with the endless revivals of Marxism that comes back like whack-a-mole till your arm falls off. So we do need to stay. I think the job for the alternative media is to continue to bring good reasons, good arguments, and very passionate and powerful diatribes, if that's what's necessary, to the masses as a whole, to help bring them to a more rational state of mind. Because sure, the left has their particular agenda, they have their particular goals, and they're not going to give up. Then the left never sleeps, they never give up, they always double down. And so we need to be resolute. You know, as the old saying goes, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. Trump has bought us some time if he's able to achieve what he wants, and even if he's only able to achieve 25% of it, which is pretty good for a lot of these promises. He's bought us time, and what we need to do is take that time to continue to educate, take the continuing freedom of speech that we possess to continue to educate people so that we can build a more philosophical groundswell against leftism rather than just like, oh, well, you know, the economy's improved a little, and that's all great, but that's the effect of pursuing particular moral values like protection of property, freedom of speech, and so on. Let's continue to educate people on that so that we can disarm the left fundamentally rather than playing whack-a-mole with each policy proposal.
I agree, and I think it's actually kind of a good sign, just like I said with fake news. If we can have this debate as to what's fake and what is real, I think we're going to win that debate. If Obama and the leftist ideologues are going to double down on this, as they indicate they're going to do, rather than looking and saying, you know what, the country has kind of understood some things about how globalism isn't working out and some of these other policies that they don't like, so we're going to try to adapt to that and try to shift the party a little bit. No, they're not going to do that. They're going to double down. They've already done it in an unprecedented way. I think that's going to be a very good case for us because I really do think this is a fight we can win, Stefan.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I was thinking about way back in the day, David, if you wanted to pursue the truth outside of the mainstream agenda before the internet, you were just a crazy guy in a library. And, you know, now, of course, we've been able to join hands. You know, before we were kind of individual stars in the night sky. Now there are lines between us and we're turning to constellations that can actually tell stories and undo mythology. So I think we absolutely have been handed an incredible opportunity to change the course of world history.
I agree. And we join hands with Stefan Molyneux. You can find him at freedomainradio.com. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. As I hear that music, I got a tiger by the tail. Well, the left has got a tiger by the tail. They're coming after Donald Trump. You know, it's kind of interesting, this article from Daily Mail where they say, Trump, yeah, okay, he lost by 2.8 million votes. But guess what? If you take away California, he actually won. If you take away California and New York, he won by 3 million. They point out that California and New York had a combined 5.8 million vote advantage in just those two states. As a matter of fact, 4.2 million vote advantage. So that was a margin of victory in California alone. 4.2 million votes just in California. And they say, well, you know, we need to have a direct democracy and popular election because Hillary won by 2.8 million votes. She won California by 4.2 million votes. She won New York by 1.6 million votes. If you get rid of the Electoral College, California and New York are going to be choosing your president. That's why we have the Electoral College. It's a firewall, as I've said before, a firewall against the concentration of power and against the corruption that you're going to find in these populous states that are going to be controlled by one or two populous cities that usually have a lot of corruption in those cities as well. And that's why it's so important. And even then, we still had in the Electoral College, Hillary Clinton losing 5 electors, Donald Trump just losing 2. I think that's very interesting. And we have Jim Webb lampooning Bill Clinton. He keeps talking about how he won by a landslide. Well, Jim Webb, who also ran as a Democrat who actually spoke truth in the Democrat debate when he said people have a right to protect themselves, and it is gross hypocrisy for all you, the rest of you on this stage, to say that you would take away individuals' rights to protect themselves with firearms when you have an army of security guards protecting each and every one of you. He said that to them, and you could just imagine the jaws dropping in the that auditorium where there was nothing but Democrats there. But he spoke the truth to Bill Clinton as well. He said, Bill Clinton reminds me, he said this on Twitter, Bill Clinton reminds the media that he won by a landslide, quote unquote, in the Electoral College. Let's remember that he won only 43% of the popular vote. So you see, it works out a couple of different ways. As Newt Gingrich pointed out about the Electoral College, he said, this is a football season. A team can have more yards and still lose the game. What matters is the points that you put on the board. And I think Reason had a better explanation for it. They said, look, the World Series is a best of 7 games. You think about the election, we have 51 different elections, 50 states plus the District of Columbia. And so it's who wins the most of those, just like it's the baseball team that wins the most number of games in the World Series, not the baseball team that scored the most runs. Okay, so there's a lot of there's different rules, and those are good rules to have. The problem with it is the faithless electors, and I believe that that's something, a can of worms that's been unleashed that is going to only grow and get worse unless we address this at the state level where it needs to be addressed. Understand, as we were talking about the Obama transition team and how he is going to continue pushing in an unprecedented way. We've never seen a president stick around and remain politicized like this, like he's going to do, like he's announced he's going to do, even teaming with Eric Holder to sue legislatures in Republican states.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say, see, I told you so, that communist Chinese-style net censorship was coming to the web, because it's already here. It's being announced. The way you keep the internet open and free is you get involved more than ever. Go to Infowars.com/app. A new battleship in the fight. Infowars Live, available right now. We're looking for a crew to man it. You gonna sit down and play games and be a trendy? Or are you gonna be part of history? Don't sit by and let the internet and free speech be stolen from you. Take action.